Right. Recording. Let's get to GDevelop. Very first, GDevelop, developer, log, whatever. DevLog number one. Here we go. Alright, I wasn't really planning on doing these because I'm still like experimenting and making systems or whatever. It's more experimenting. It's not really developing. But I suppose, I don't know. And I'm in a mood of like sharing is caring because of what's happened lately. But anyways, before I bore you too much with rambling, let me show you what I got to teach you, or show you how to do, or what I figured out, whatever. Let me just get my controller because it's tangled. Right. So the Flexbox extension, which I was using maliciously. Well, not maliciously, like a bunch, right? That's what I meant. I was like using a bunch of it. Malicious was the wrong word. English is hard. It's late, right? So I was using it for inventories, I was using for everything. But the damn extension is broken. Has a memory leak. They found out that was causing FPS issues. Anyways, right? So inventories are very important for RPGs, and I wanted to make one. Platform RPG. This one. Well, it's still a work in progress. Very far. Cool stuff, right? We do spells, it does numbers, right? Damage numbers. Very cool stuff. And then we get stuff from the items. The things, right? That didn't actually do anything because I turned it off, I think. But anyways, there's an issue. It's very hard to make inventories. Even though they're such an integral part of RPGs, making inventories can be really, really hard. I mean, kinda. If you make old school inventory systems like Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, those are really, really simple. And I can show you how to do those very quickly. But making inventories that are like dynamic, that you use stuff and they change as you're looking at them and they change positions and stuff, those are really hard. And if you look those up on the internet, you're going to have a hard time because there's barely any stuff out there. All right, but let me show you. So this is just a menu. This is a layer, right? All this stuff is on layers on top of in the scene, right? So this is the kind of like Link to the Past stuff where it's just pre-made or predefined or whatever. You just need to make a cursor that goes to the positions. This one, the inside the armory, right? Even though I just picked up a sword, that's not linked, right? I turned that off because the flex stuff. Don't mind that. That was just me being, showing you stuff. So an inventory where stuff exists and you click it and it disappears from one side, appears on the other, everything dynamically changes. Those are really hard. And I know because I spent the better part of like 3 days figuring them out. A lot of bug testing, a lot of bug removing. Let me show you. So I'm going to press a button and I'm going to give myself a bunch of items. Oh, not really much, like 5. You're going to hear a weird sound. It's a debug sound. It's something I use sometimes to make sure that something's happening when it's supposed to. Sorry if this is annoying. Ow. That was a bit annoying. Because that was like 5 sounds at once. So this is what I mean. Right. I press this one. Disappears from there. Appears from there. All the other ones moved, right? If I use the one in the middle, this one's going to stay. These two are going to move. Cool, right? And all the orders. It doesn't matter. It will always work. See? It's updating. It's It's on the order where you pick them up or you change them. It's very cool, right? Now, here's the other thing that people have a hard time with. Memory. So we have it like that. Go back one, go up one. It's the exact same place where I left them. Go off completely. Go back. Exact same place. They're there. I'm gonna press a button and we're gonna change scenes. Well, technically we're gonna change to the very same scene, but it's the different scene, right? It's a reset. We just changed the scenes. I open it up and look at that. All the items are where they're supposed to. Cool, right? Like this. You know, when I was playing Final Fantasy and stuff, the old ones, and you're messing around with inventories and going from one to the other, and you're like, this should be easy, right? It's the actual game that's the hard part, right? When I started making the inventory, it's like, dude, making the game is so easy. Why is making an inventory so hard? This is like 90% of the difficulty is making this inventory. The rest of the game, making the actual items actually work and do stuff, that is so easy in comparison. Oh god. Anyways, check this other thing, right? So now they're messy, right? And you're like, I have OCD. I can't handle this. My items need order, right? And you're like, it's fine. I'll just press a button. And now they're organized. Well, it's hard to say organized because they're items, right? But they're organized in an order that is predefined. This order is the order I told them to show up in when I press the button. So I can sort them in a predefined manner. Cool, right? If I change, go back, there they are. Very cool stuff, right? So let me show you. Also, no annoying sound that time, right? It's because the annoying sound only pops up when we're actually changing the main ID or the main variable, or adding or subtracting it. Right, so let me show you kind of what's going on in the background. So this is only tracking. Okay, basically what you're looking at when we do this, we're changing between inventory 1 and inventory 2. We just call it one entire inventory because, you know, magic of gaming, right? That's what it looks like. This is what we call an inventory, the whole thing. But technically, these are two inventories. So when I click this shield, it's gonna tell it to equip it. But technically what it's gonna do is it's gonna delete from here. It's gonna delete the ID, right? Because WS means wooden shield. Right now it's 2. So second slot. This is gonna be 0 when I click it. So we're gonna delete it, tell it the ID is 0, but then we're gonna give it a new ID 2 here because it's on the second slot. See, 0. You can't see the 2 because I'm only tracking the bottom half. But right now he has a new ID which is 2. So basically I'm deleting from here and creating here. And then when I click it, it's deleting from here and it's creating here. So it's 2 different inventories. And they're actually 2 different items. This one's called a wooden shield. This one's called a wooden shield equipped. So they're actually 2 items. But anyways, that's not entirely important. That was just like a mind-blowing thing. So what's happening here? So when we have an item, when I press the button, and I said I gave myself items. I literally did. I pressed the item, the button, and I told the game add the item to my inventory. So then when I open this up, the event created the item. And when they first created the item, they generated an ID, right? They created the first item and the ID went from 0 to 1. And then that ID passed it on to the item on an object variable. So we have this global variable that when it creates an item, it adds one. And then that number, whichever one it is at, so if it's 0 and it goes to 1 when you create the item, then it's going to give the number 1 to the item it just created. And it's going to put it in an object variable. Then that object variable is then passed that number on to a different global variable. And that global variable is the memory. So the very first one keeps the tally, right? It keeps track of who comes and goes. The second variable, the object variable, is the item knowing where to go. And the third one is the memory, right? So you pass on the where to go to the memory, which is these ones. So the ones that end in V, so from here onwards, these are the memories, right? And they're identical to the number IDs. Now, why are these important? Why not just use these? Because these ones are the reason why every time you close and open the menu, or every time you change the scene, the items remain the same. Check this out. This is going to be cool. Kinda. It's geeky, I guess. If I close this, wow, right? Also, that wasn't delay. Those numbers, they're actually on the timer because this was where my FPS counter goes. I'm just like repurposing it for the moment. So it's on the timer. It takes a little second. It doesn't matter, right? Don't mind that. So when I close the layer, they all turn to 0, right? And that's because I just deleted all the objects. And if the objects don't exist, then their variables, the object variables, also don't exist, which equals 0. You know? But the memory part, those are still there. And if I recreate that, if I open again, it's going to recreate the items and then give each item the value that they have in memory. And the reason why only the object variables update, it's because the memory ones, the global variables with the memory, only update when we're actually looking at the screen. Like when this screen is going on, the thing is updating all the time. The variables are constantly updating. It's making sure that everything is where it is. The moment we exit, it stops that. It deletes the items, but the memory things, they don't update anymore. Because if they updated right now, they would all be 0, right? Because that's what the object variable is at. Anyways, this seems kind of very complicated, right? So instead of trying to like get you to wrap your head around it, I'm just going to give you everything. I'm going to show you all the events. I'm going to show you everything that you need. And hopefully it's going to be long, and I'm sorry, but there's no better way of explaining this. It's like this, right? If you want something cool and something that works properly and does all that stuff, you need to put in the work. If you're just expecting it to be like, I'm just gonna code it really quickly, right? I'm just gonna make a couple events and everything's gonna work perfectly. It's, forget about it, right? You're in the wrong business. If you want to make something that looks cool, does cool stuff, everything works properly, and in case you didn't notice, none of that broke. There was no gaps, no item disappeared, no nothing. It's because I tested and retested and debugged and all that stuff, and I made sure, trial and error, all that stuff, that everything was rock solid, right? It's solid coding, and I'm gonna show you. But anyways, so what are you gonna need? You're gonna need variables and you're gonna need some objects. So to begin with, this is the layer you're looking at. This is an external layout that you're looking at, and we just create this at the beginning of the scene. Right, so these are slots. So every single item, it occupies a slot. How can I put this? Basically, you just need slots, right? They're not in a random position. They're not this position plus something. No, they're actually being sent to a slot. And each slot is an individual item or object. They're all objects. And they're not copy pasted. They're actual individuals, right? So slot, as you can tell, like slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, slot 5, and so on. This is the first inventory, right? This is the bottom half. These ones are the exact same thing. I just gave it a different name for my sake, to keep track of everything. So I call these EQ. So EQ1, EQ2, EQ3, 4, and 5. Again, they're all, each are their own objects. This is important because to make the distinction and make sure everything goes where it's supposed to. So I'm using my blocks are like 64 by 64 because I'm using 64 by 64 items. And then I'm changing the origin point of the item to 32 by 32, so it's right in the middle. And when I tell it to move, I tell it to move to the center of these blocks. Anyways, so everything's going to be really... I was going to say, this is important, but everything's going to be really important. Right, so you need the blocks, you need the slots on the layer, wherever you want to make your inventory. And then you need, very specifically, 2 item groups. These need to be global groups, obviously, with global items, obviously. And on one group, if you want to do it this way, like with 2 equipment things, like one is just the inventory, one is the equipped items. And again, you can take this system and change it and make it into anything. That's why it's so good. Like, you could make it proper RPG, right? You can make, instead of having the items like this, you can make, one is the sword, one is the helm, one is the armor, one is the shield, all that stuff. And then you can change it with the part, with the events. Instead of just changing it to one of these, you can give it restrictions like, oh, if it's a sword, it only goes on this one. And if it's occupied, then you change it or whatever, right? Use your imagination. Anyways, back to the grouping. So, but if you want to have it like this, right, you're going to need 2 groups. One for the items that are not equipped. I just call these items. And the ones that are for the one group for the items that are equipped. And inside these groups, you're going to put your items. So this one is the not equipped ones. You put all your items on here. Every single one. This is going to be important for later. And on this one, remember me saying that there are different items? This you're going to put the same items, but you're gonna duplicate them. So you duplicate your items, and one is for not equipped, and one is for equipped. And you just put EQ at the end. I found that the easiest way. This is like for the sake of my own head, right? My mind, keep track of things. So you just duplicate your items, put an EQ at the end, and then you put it in this group. Because then you have two distinct groups of two distinct items, right? Items and equipped items, right? Slots and the two groupings. Now, for the variables. Variables is a pain. You need 6 variables to make this work. Or you need 4 variables if you're using the GDevelop inventory system, the conditions and the actions, which I am. Let me just zoom in really quick. Like, my eyes are really bad. I'm nearly blind. Wait, game dashboard. Where's the variables again? Global variables. Right. So 6 kinds of variables. But if you're using the inventory system, you only need 4. Now, I actually started with the 6 sort of variables. But then I was like, oh, I kind of want to show this to people. And then when I looked, I was like, oh man, there's so many variables. It's going to be such a pain. I tried the GDevelop inventory system, and it saves stuff to memory. So it makes them global. It works through scene changes. It does everything it's supposed to. It basically, it makes the variables for you as you're adding the items. You're just not seeing it. And it's so much easier. Like, as long as you can keep track of everything without needing a list like this, you're fine. So for this example, we're actually using the GDevelop inventory system, because it's just going to make stuff easier, I think. So you're going to need 2 sets of variables. One is the main ID, like this one, item ID. This is for the unequipped stuff. And you're going to make it into a number, starting at 0. This is important. Then you need a structure. And again, this is important for later. Just call it like not equipped or anything that you can make sense of it. And then you add in your items. And each item needs to be a number starting at 0. So structure, numbers, items, right? Then you need the exact same thing, but for the equipped part. So instead of items ID, you can call it like equipped ID or equip ID. And again, it's a number starting at 0. And again, a new structure for equip ID. I just call it EQ ID. The other one's like not equipped. This one's just equip ID. And then your items, all numbers, all starting at 0. Right? So I hope that was simple enough. So we got the 2 sets of 2 variables each. We got the slots. We got the items sorted in the groupings, items equipped. Now for the events. That was the easy part until now. So if this stuff does not make sense, right? If it's too much and you're like, dude, no, my brain just broke. You just copy this. You can use this as long as you understand more or less how this works. You can just copy this, and you will be fine. You can just copy this from here upwards, right? For this entire item. And yes, you do need to program this for every single item, but you don't right? Because you can just copy paste it. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you. I'll show you how to make I'll show you how to add an item effortlessly with copy pasting and replacing the names and all that stuff. It'll be really, really easy. Trust me. You just need to do this once. As long as you do this once, you're golden. After that, it'll be easy. So, where to start? Let's see if I can show you how, like, run you through how all of this works. So I pressed the button earlier, and all that button did was add item to armory inventory, and that's it, really. Like, for instance, add magic sword. Like, add magic sword to the inventory armory. That's all he did when I pressed the button. So now, when we open the inventory, this is the very first thing that checks. This one, right in the middle. And it checks, right? We have the item, inventory armory, has a magic sword. The magic sword is not equipped, right? We just got the item, we did nothing. The variable not equipped magic sword equals 0. This is important. This is stopping this from happening multiple times and is also the thing that's responsible for selecting this first. Seems insignificant, but it's not. And then we have a different one that only triggers all of this stuff if this is true and if we're looking at the scene. The layer. I have a different variable that, like, every time something happens, I use a variable that checks that that thing is happening. In this case, I have a global variable that shows me that keeps track every time I have the layer armory showing. This is important, right? this kind of variable, this kind of thinking in programming will save you a bunch of headaches. This makes things so much easier. Start doing this if you don't. If you're still listening, which I'm pretty sure no one is at this point, and if you're going to get something out of this, do that. Every time you open a layer, every time you open a menu, every time you do something, try having a global that just checks it. In this case, when I open the layer armory, I have this thing that sends it from 0 to 1. So if armory is showing, if it's equal 1, and all this stuff is, so if you have the item, it's not equipped, the thing is 0, the ID is 0 in the memory, and the armory is showing, then we change the global variable, item ID. This is the tally, right? This is the thing that keeps track of everything. And we add 1. So right now, at the start, it goes from 0 to 1. Then we create the magic sword. Position doesn't matter. I put it 1010 so I know where it is. It doesn't matter because this is going to be changed to the slot. Yeah, I'll show you soon. We create the sword, and then we change the ID, we change the object variable ID of magic sword, and we set it to the item ID. So we set it to this one, right? So we open the thing. If we have the item, this one adds 1. We create it, and then we tell the item, hey, you're this number. You're this one on the line, right? It's like taking a ticket on the line. So we set it to item ID, and then we change the global variable, the not equipped magic sword, to the item, to the variable, the object variable of the item. So magic sword variable ID. Right. So we get the item. This thing goes to 1. We make the item, and then we tell the item, hey, you're this one. The item goes, oh, okay, but so I don't forget, hey guy, this one, remember it for me. I'm number 1, for example. And the memory goes, oh, okay, so later when you need it, I'll tell you again, you're number 1. That's why we need so many things. And then we play the annoying sound, just so I make sure that this is happening. You don't have to put this. Right, so we just made the item. And by the way, I'm sorry. You don't need, in case you don't know, you don't need to go to every single item, go to the variables, go to add variable, type in ID, number, yada, 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 yada. You don't need to declare it. All you need to do is put this here. On the events, if you do like add, change object variable or object number variable, and you put a number, it will create the object variable for you. You don't need to go and do it for every single one. So just do this. Don't worry about, just keep track of the name of the variable. This is the important part. Right. So variable ID, object variable ID is now 1. So then we go down here to the slots, unequipped. And again, if the armory is showing, so this is only checking if we're looking at the armory. If show armory equals 1, then, oh, and the ID of the items, so it's going to check every single item that you have on this group, and it's going to check, does this item have a variable called ID or number variable called ID? It does. What's the number? If it's 1, then it's going to change it to this position, which is the position of slot, right? Slot number 1. If it's 0, it doesn't do anything. If it's 2, then it's going to go to slot number 2. If it's 3, then it's going to go to slot number 3 and 4 and 5 and so on, right? This is what's keeping stuff in place. And again, this is only being checked when the thing is showing. Right. So we made the item. The item then went, okay, my ID is number 1. So I go to slot number 1. Right. So then, for example, we made a bunch of different other items, like, and everything went the same way, right? Have the item, wooden shield. Not equipped, wooden shield. What is it? It's 0. Yada yada. So the magic sword made it go from 0 to 1. So the wooden shield, which comes next, for instance, would keep the tally going up, right? It would add 1. So from 1 to 2. And then we create wooden shields. And then we'd make an object variable called ID. And we make it, hey, you're this number, which would be number 2. And then the object would say, hey, this one, not equipped, wooden shield, the one in memory. Remind me again, you're number 2, or I'm number 2, right? And you go, okay, I'll remember that. And then the thing would check, like, which number are you? You're number 2. Then you go to slot number 2. I hope that makes some kind of sense. Anyways, so we're going to keep going, right? We have a few items. And then we're like, okay, let me use an item. So we go up here. This is where you change stuff. Like right now, I just have it for debug purposes, which is the mouse stuff. But this is where I'll put, for instance, like if the cursor that I made, the little sword thing, if it's in collision with magic sword, and then the gamepad button, whatever, was pressed, then you do this stuff. Right now it's checking, is the mouse in collision with the thing? The item, magic sword, is not equipped, all that stuff. And I press the button, then it's gonna set magic sword to equipped. And then it's gonna change the variable, item ID, and we're gonna subtract 1. So this, again, this is the one that keeps the tally. So when we created the item, we added 1. Now we're deleting the item. We're equipping it, we're using it, whatever. We're getting rid of it. So we're subtracting 1 because there's one less item on the line, on the tally. So we subtract this, we delete the magic sword, and then on the sub event, this is where we keep things dynamically updating. If the variable ID of items, so again, it's going to check all the items under the group ID, under the group items, I mean. It's going to check all their variables, all their object variables, named ID, and it's going to check, okay, if the item has a number that is bigger than the not equipped magic sword, it's the one in memory, right? Because we just deleted the item. And the moment you delete the item, their variable disappears, which is 0, which would make this useless because all of them would be greater or less than this one, right? Because this one would be 0. So it's gonna check, and if the item is greater than this one, meaning like if it goes after, right? If magic sword is number 2, and then the wooden shield is number 3, then the moment we destroy the magic sword, the wooden shield would go, oh, I'm greater than that one, so it's gonna subtract 1 from the ID. This is the variable, the object variable. So yeah, if they're greater, then we subtract 1 from all of the items object variable named ID that are greater than this one, right? Oh man, I'm sorry, it's late. I can probably word this better. Hopefully you can just look at this. You know what? Let me zoom out. Hopefully you can just look at this and go, huh, that makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm making a horrible job of explaining this. Anyways, so we check the IDs, right? Alright, that's the reset. You don't need to look at that yet. So we check the IDs. If they're greater than the one in memory, we subtract 1 from all of their IDs. If they're not greater, then their IDs remain unchanged. And then, after that, we finally update this one and we set it to 0. Again, this is important. We no longer need it. We're not using it anymore. We destroyed the sword, so we finally update it to 0. And then we repeat the process, right? Where is it? It's the bottom one. Because now it goes to the other inventory. So basically now we're going to do the exact same thing for the equipped part, right? Because now it's going to check, do we have the item? Yes. Is it equipped? Yes. Is the equip ID, not the not equipped. Now it's to the second part, right? The equip ID, is it 0? Yes, it's 0. Is the armory showing? Yes. Then we're going to add 1 to this one that keeps the tally. We're going to create the item. We're going to tell the item, hey, you're this number. And then the item is going to say, hey, I'm that number to the variable. And you're going to play the sound and yada, yada, yada. It's going to do the exact same thing. And eventually you're going to get to this one, which is you press the button on top. We subtract 1. We unequip it. It's going to do the exact same thing, but for the other one, right? You can just look at it. Hopefully it'll make sense. Right. So here's the important part. I'm sorry. It's all important. So here's the other really important part, which is this one, right at the bottom. This one is the stuff that makes sure that stuff keeps updating as you're using the items. Because all of this is locked, right? All of this stuff is locked. This only happens once when we tell it to happen. No more, no less. It just happens once, end off. These ones tell it for keep updating the memory variables with the variable of the object. These are the object variables. These are the memories. For as long as we're looking at the layer, these are always updating. Always. That's why when I showed you closing the layer, they stopped updating and they kept their values. It's because we're no longer looking at that layer. So if you don't use variables like this to check if you have something open, then you need to do something else, like the layer is showing or something like that. If the layer is hiding, don't do this or something like that. Just this is important. This will break everything. It needs to be in this position specifically, and it can only trigger when you're actually looking at the layer, right? To keep stuff in memory when you close stuff down. So this part's very important. And finally, if you're still awake, and if you made it this far, kudos to you. I'm going through this and going, oh my god, does this make sense? It does in my head. Right. So let's say you made an item. You collected the item. You opened the menu. You didn't use it. You closed the menu. And then you reopen the menu. This is what happens. This is what recreates the item without changing the position of the item, without changing the tally. For instance, this one checks, right? This one. Is the item equipped? Do you have the item? Yes. Is the item equipped? No. Create this trigger. Let me put this in the bottom. So it makes sense. The equip ID, is it greater than 0? See, this is the stuff. This one specifically is the selection. This is what selects this from this. This is what is going to make, what's going to tell the game, is it a new item? Do I need to like add one, do all this stuff, give it an ID? Or is the ID greater than 0 and I just need to create it and then remind it, right? So if it's greater than 0, if the layer is showing, again, it's very important, if the layer is showing, and this is, again, another thing that's going to make it happen only once. It's locking it, right? If the number of magical swords living on the scene, so if it's less than 1, meaning it's going to create one and no more. Like it's only like, oh, it's 0, I'm going to make one, and then stops. This is very important. Start using stuff like this instead of trigger once. Trigger once is very bad. But anyways, then we create the item, and then we give it the object variable ID, and we change it to the variable that we have in memory, the global variable, the not equipped ID, if it's not equipped item. And if it's an equipped item, you have the item, it's equipped, does the exact same thing. It's greater than 0, so it selects this one instead of this one. And then it does this. Creates the item and then reminds the item where it is in the position. Man, that's a lot of words. And this is a very long video. But this is how I did it. Well, anyways, that's the whole thing, right? So, okay, before we make a new item, very quickly, let me show you something else that's kind of cool. This is the reset. Sorry. So this is the reset or sorting. So if you're looking at the layer again, this happens all the time, right? This is very good practice. I'm telling you, start doing stuff like this, you're gonna love it. When you're looking at the scene, looking at the layer, and you press the button, doesn't matter which one. We're gonna change the two big variables to 0. We're gonna reset everything. Everything's gonna go back to 0. So you're gonna make the ones that tally up the stuff. We're gonna make them 0. And then this is the cool part. These are the structures, right? The not equip ID dot magic sword, not equip ID dot wooden shield, not equip ID dot oh my god, right? We're gonna set them to 0. And the reason I told you to make a structure, it's because when you make stuff under a structure, right? If I go here, you can see it's like, are you sure you don't mean this, right? If you don't finish, like if I finish it, if I put not equip ID dot, then I don't know, enforcer shield, then I'm specifically talking about this item. If I don't finish it, if I don't put the dot anything after, if I just leave it like that, then whatever I tell it to do, like in this case, it's set the global variable to 0, it's gonna change all of these items to 0 at once. So anything that goes after the dot, the not equip thing dot, and then add item, it's gonna be changed to 0. All of them. And the same thing for this one. The equip ID, it's a structure. If you don't finish it, if you don't put dot item, then it's going to change all of the items under the structure, set them to whatever value you told it to set. It's going to save you a lot of time. That's why you need the structure, because otherwise you'd have to put like equip ID, magic sword, equip ID, wooden shield, equip ID, oh my god, 0. And then, oh god, not equip ID, magic sword, not equip ID, whatever. It's going to be a pain in the ass. And then we're going to delete all the items under the global group items and all the ones under items EQ. Honestly, I'm falling asleep a little bit. Maybe it's because it's late. But anyways, so that's how you reset stuff. So let me show you one more time. You can pause the video, take a screenshot, print, whatever. Just copy this. And it's the same for the slots. The slots, let me show you the equipped ones. It's the same thing, right? It's the very same. It's exactly the same thing. So yeah, making a new item. It's really hard. So as long as you already have the item made, like you've made the whatever item and whatever item EQ, right? It's ready. All you gotta do is you click on one of these. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. Sorry. I started explaining this and then I didn't tell you about the order. All right. So you press the button, all the stuff gets reset, right? Everything gets deleted. And you're like, okay, so where does the order come from? This is the order. Because if everything is 0, it's gonna default. If you're looking at the layer, it's gonna default to doing the very first one, right? Which is this one. Or this one if the item is equipped. If the item is equipped, it's gonna do this one. If it's not equipped, then it's gonna do this one. And it's gonna start the cycle all over again, right? It's gonna create the item, yada yada yada. And because GDevelop makes stuff from top to bottom, it's gonna start here and do like the magic sword first, and then the knight sword, and then the wooden shield, and then this one, and then this one, right? So this is the order. So when you press it to reset, and you're looking at the scene, at the very, god damn it, at the layer. If you're looking at the layer, then it's gonna create the items in this order. So if I wanted to change, like, oh no, actually star pendant is so much better than wooden shield, right? There you go. So it's gonna create magic sword, knight sword, star pendant. Now, that's gonna be the when I press this button and I have all these items, it's gonna put them in this order. It doesn't matter if they're on the equipped side or non-equipped side. It's gonna create it in that order. All right. How to make a new item? It's very simple. All you gotta do is you copy one of these. So I'm selecting the magic sword. I'm doing Control ZVC, Control C to copy. Then I'm gonna go on. Is this empty? No. Is this empty? Yes. You just gotta go to one that's like mostly empty. These are like external events. So, hello? Did I not copy? Oh my god. Sorry, technical difficulties. Did I not copy? I'm sure I pressed the buttons. So ZVC, okay. Control C. I'm gonna come here. Let me make sure. This select. There you go. Sorry. Control technical difficulties. Right. So now I'm gonna click this thing in the corner, the magnifying glass thing, the search. And now we're gonna search, and this is why you should be sure, like you should keep a certain structure of when naming your stuff. Right? Magic sword. So the top one is gonna be magic sword. Let me move this. The bottom one, we're gonna make it what's it? Another item that I have. Mage's hat. Mage's hat. Already have this item prepped. It's one of the 10 that I have, and I'm gonna click replace. Not search, replace. It found 10 words named magic sword and replaced it with mage's hat. Just making sure it's mage's hat. Because sometimes I have Doug on the background, and for some reason I keep typing magic hat instead of mage's head. Right? And there you go. Mage's hat. We open it up. And look at that. Everything that said magic sword now says mage's head. It changed literally every single thing that said magic sword to mage's head. So I close this. Let me zoom out again. My eyes are really bad. That's why I use the magnifying glass so much. I'm gonna copy. Actually, I don't even need to copy. I can just. There you go. Then we're gonna come here, and you just need to paste. There you go. Just like that, we got an extra item. let's have a look. Alright, so this is a very long video. Very, very long. Now I'm very sorry, but stuff like this isn't very easy to explain, especially when I don't have a script. Because I just like, I got to the end of the day, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make the video. I'm like, let's wing it. It's gonna be a blog or vlog or whatever. Anyways, I'm gonna press the button and I'm gonna give myself the item. Sorry for the noise. There you go. And we have an extra item. We have the hat. See? And it works. This is the other ones. You just need to be careful. Right, there's just one thing you need to be careful. Right. That's because it's still in like debugging mode, like still construction mode. I didn't put a limit on the items. So, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Remember, we have 5 slots up here. So what happens if I use one more? It's gonna disappear. Well, kinda. It's gonna go up here in the corner. Remember, I told it to go to position 10, 10. That's where it is. It's just there in the corner, being all alone. So if you don't give it like if you put it like minus whatever, it might go disappear off screen and then you'll never use it again. Right? See, if you want to have more than 5 items, or if you just want to use like a certain amount of items, you need to put like a lock, right? I need to tell it like add an extra variable and be like, oh, if equipped equals 5, then just go whenever you click the item and tell it no and not do anything, right? Or like if the thing equals 5, then don't do anything. You can click it, it'll do nothing. Something like that. That's the easy part, right? But as you can tell, all this stuff works. There it is. Magic head's where it's supposed to. Right. So, luckily, all the other stuff that I found out that's really cool is way easier to explain. Kinda. Like, for instance, spatial sound on GDevelop sucks. Like, it really sucks. Like, it's really, really bad. It doesn't work properly. First of all, it needs to be on a channel, which makes it really hard to do multiple instances of it for like multiple characters, which is, I don't know, it's a pain to work out. And then it's like, how can I put this? It's like if an object is coming from left to right, right? Like left to right. I know my sides. It's like you can hear it like getting louder and louder and louder, like getting closer. But then there's no middle. There's no smooth transition from left to right. It just goes like, it's on the left, it's on the left, and then suddenly, bang, on the right. It's not like it's mixing. There's no mix in the middle, which is really weird. So what's a way around it? Is instead of making it spatial, you can just make the sound goes louder or quieter depending on their position. Like, listen. See how the noise the jelly's making? Like, the closer they are to us, the louder it gets. Alright, I just got close to the lava, so you start listening to the lava. Like, this stuff is very easy. Like, the lava stuff was, like, genius. I think. It took me the entire day to figure out how to do the lava one. Because, again, the lava one needs to be on a channel. Because it's a looped thing, so it's different. But I made it work. Like, if you're close to the lava, you can hear it. If you move away, it stops working, like it fades out. It's really cool. This stuff, on the other hand, like you're getting closer and it's making more noise. That's easy. Like, see, can't even hear them. See, but then you start hearing like getting closer. That's so cool. So that stuff, or like the torches, for instance, like how they move at different times, or they keep updating at different times. Like ones are faster, ones are slower, that kind of stuff. That's all like the tips and tricks that I can share with you that I've been like figuring out how to do. Or like AIs as well. Like look at Jelly. It's alive, right? It's just moving around whenever it wants, but if it sees me, it runs towards me. Like it hasn't seen me yet. If I go, there you go. Now it sees me. But then he goes like, I ain't falling for that. And he moves away. If I go close, oh, he starts chasing me. If I jump over him, look, he's still chasing me. It's cool AI stuff like that. I love that. Well, anyways, this video is way too long. I hope you got something out of it. If you made it to this part, leave a comment saying I made it to the end. I doubt anyone's gonna make it this far. Anyways, if you did, leave a comment, leave a like if you liked. Let me know what you thought, and I'll try to make something better than this. This was just me ranting at the end of the day, showing you something cool. Right. I'm not gonna edit anything. You can look at OBS. Right. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed some part of this, and I'll catch you guys next time.